This is Stephen Kraftmiller. I'm Michael Hepler. We are developers at the Institute for Quantitative Social Science at Harvard University. In this session, we'll discuss jQuery integration with JSF2 libraries. Our institution is unusual compared to other research institutes at Harvard because it combines active research with technology, giving an opportunity to develop new tools and applications to improve the research cycle. Among the many tools developed at IQSS, we have two Java products, the Dataverse Network and Consilience. The Dataverse Network is an open source repository for sharing research data. It gives incentives to researchers to make data accessible to others by offering data citation, branding, control of the data, while the application takes care of data preservation and good archival practices. IQSS hosts a Dataverse network for social science research that holds over 50,000 studies with 700,000 data files distributed across more than 470 Dataverses. A Dataverse is an individual site and a Dataverse network created and managed by a scholar, research group, center, department, journal, or an institution. Each Dataverse contains research studies with descriptive information and data files. Consilience assists you in finding groups or clusters of a large set of text documents using existing clustering methods and finding new clustering solutions. It is a new way to read, organize, understand, and derive insights from large sets of documents. You can discover and organize unstructured text, navigating from the universe of possible clusterings to each individual text document. Integrating jQuery with JSF can raise several issues. The session compares various use cases to see how jQuery integration for ICEfaces 3 compares to previous releases in which integration was occasionally problematic. We also present a comparison of jQuery and JavaScript features in ICEfaces, PrimeFaces, and RichFaces. When we started to integrate jQuery into our apps, it was initially simple functionality like toggle to show and hide blocks of content or form elements on the page. Also rounded corners before CSS3 to give layout more appealing look and feel. Now we use more advanced techniques like in Consilience where we animate the app's navigation. In this presentation, we'll review some of the JSF and jQuery use cases in our Dataverse Network and Consilience apps, and review some of the workarounds that we had to figure out in order to get everything integrated properly. This is the application architecture of our two projects. The Dataverse Network was first started in 2006. In 2008, with version 1.7, we added ICEfaces. We're now up to version 3.2. Consilience, it's still in beta. It was started last year, and maybe release later this year for version 1. We also develop everything in NetBeans. It's pretty good. We selected ICEfaces primarily for their direct-to-DOM rendering, which utilizes AJAX and allowing for incremental changes to the DOM that affect only parts of the page that have changed. jQuery is the most popular JavaScript library and makes adding JavaScript to our apps easier. When first integrating ICEfaces and jQuery, we encountered a few issues. Now ICEfaces 3 ACE components utilize jQuery, so we'll evaluate how those apply to our apps. With other libraries like PrimeFaces and RichFaces emerging, we have taken to evaluating those as well. We have a few useful tips for when integrating jQuery initially into your project. First, like many other JavaScript libraries, jQuery uses a $ symbol as a function or a variable name. In jQuery, this is just an alias, so you can rename or to avoid any conflicts. Your first line of jQuery, you just place a jQuery no conflict, and you'll be able to switch that out. So in this example, we have the money symbol, the $, and then we've introduced the jQuery no conflict and have switched jQuery out throughout our code. Here we show the use of IDs as selectors. JSF renders IDs to the page that contain a colon symbol separating name container components. In this example, we are using text22 for our output text. Normally with our jQuery, we could just use text22 as a selector, but in the span element that is rendered on the page with the ID of form 1, tab set 1, 0, context 22, we can't use that in our jQuery. jQuery uses the colon as a pseudo-class delimiter for an element for instances such as hover or disabled. In order to select this element with ID text22 in your jQuery, you should use the attribute ends with selector. The dollar symbol wildcard finds the element with a specific ID suffix, text22, or for simpler naming container IDs, you can also use double backslashes to escape the colon symbol. And here we have the live method for attaching event handlers when content is dynamically added to the page. As of jQuery 1.7, the on method has replaced live as well as bind. It's more efficient for selecting IDs, and you can still use live, but underneath it's using the on method. So we're going to get to a demo of our apps. The first page we're going to look at is Consilience app, the clustering space page. We will compare the animation effect with the ICEfaces ACE animation component and various jQuery techniques. I'll then turn it over to Steven. He will demo the Dataverse network add files page, where we use a jQuery click method integrated with the ICEfaces ACE file entry component. So here we have the clustering space page. We have a map that represents the clustering space. You can navigate around the map to discover new clusterings. We utilize play this. I have a little live video here. So navigate around the map. We utilize toggle form to toggle form elements on the page, as well as the animate for sliding the navigation. You then toggle elements on the page, view a single document, and here we are using the highlight plugin to highlight different keywords on the page. We can also go back and now again label one of the clusters, and then that will allow us to compare two clusters. And the jQuery GraphUp plugin creates a color map to help visualize the results, and we can toggle between the percentage and the total number of shared documents. This is a local example that we created to evaluate the new ICEfaces ACE animation component. As you can see, the obnoxiously colored block of code up in the top with the 3 buttons. We have the clusters set to 5. You can see at the top of the table. Each of the 3 buttons are using different animation techniques that will represent our sliding animation for the nav. The green button is wired with ICEfaces ACE animation component. The orange button uses jQuery within the on-click event of a command link. The blue refresh button uses the jQuery live method. Everything here works nicely as expected. We go and change the settings from 5 to 10, which you can see dynamically changes the content, the number of clusters within the element that we're animating, and everything still works nicely. Unfortunately, we tried to apply this ICEfaces ACE animation to our navigation for the entire app, and we couldn't control the animation to a point where we could replace it with replace the jQuery that we used. The animation, we couldn't control the trigger when the user clicks around other functions on the page. So clicking around the map and clicking the labels and whatnot would then trigger the animation. So we had to scrap that. Here we have the here we have the code behind it. You can see the first panel grid is our ACE component, and underneath that, within that, you can see the one line of code that we have, the ACE animation with the event click and some parameters for positioning and duration. Underneath that, we have another panel grid that contains the command link, and in that you'll see the on click event triggering the jQuery, and we have the position and duration parameters set in there as well. And then below that, you see we have our refresh button, and we have some jQuery that is controlling that. We placed everything within the live method, which maintains the click handler after the page is dynamically updated, and then we go and check the positions of each button and return them to original positions with the animate method. And this is where we turn over to Steve, demo the Dataverse network.
So last week we did a rough cut for our team, and our director gave us some constructive criticism, and then she said, can you give the Dataverse one more plug? Because you never know who's going to be in your audience. Someone in your audience could know someone who knows Kevin Bacon or something. So just want to say that the Dataverse is a way for social science researchers to preserve their data and not have to worry about changing storage media. So, these folks are researchers, they're not data archivists, and our application gives them a way to ensure that the data that they collect is stored in an easily accessible way forever, so that they don't have to worry about, going from floppies to zip drives to CDs, whatever. And, forever's a long time, but Harvard celebrated its 375th anniversary last year, so hopefully that fits people's definition of forever. Anyway, this is our add files page uses the ACE file entry component from ICEfaces 2. And here's the documentation that we get from ICEfaces. See, it's got a browse and then a send file button. So what we wanted to do was to have our users not have to use that two-step process to upload a file. So what we did was, first thing we did was we hid the send file button in our application. And then in order to get around clicking that button, we added a change event handler to the file input that calls a JavaScript function that actually clicks the button. And we'll see that in action in our page. But the issue that we ran into was that on page refresh, the file input was losing its change handler. And our solution was to add a JavaScript call in the pre-render view so to reapply the jQuery method to the file input. And we'll take a look at the page in action and then the code that makes it work. So here's the page. At the top, the user has to select the file type, and we use that to process the file upload. And then here's the browse that you saw in the ICEfaces component, but there's no send file. And if I start it, we can see what happens. So the user selects a file type and then selects a file. And then you see immediately the file drops down here. The file upload has actually been triggered. And now the user has a chance to add some text to a description and add a category. Or even if they decide that they don't like what they've selected, there's a remove button here. And then once they press the save button at the bottom, that actually updates the study with these files. So here's the code of the component. It's disabled before the file type is selected. There's a file entry listener, which is called when the command button is linked, and you see the command button display is none. So that's how it's hidden. And as I said, in the backing bean, we have in the pre-render view adding a JavaScript call, which adds a change handler function to click the hidden button. And then in the JavaScript section of the page, the click hidden add file button uses jQuery to select that hidden button and click it. So, we used ICEfaces since 2008, and we became aware of impending releases of ICEfaces 3.0, and we saw that it was integrating jQuery into some of their components, the ACE components that I just pointed out, one of them. So we dug a little deeper, and we saw that these had been forked from PrimeFaces libraries, so we wanted to see what was going on there and learn some more about the PrimeFaces 3 libraries. And while we were at it, we decided to see if there's anything else going on and look at the other major player, which is RichFaces. So again, ICEfaces 3, it has these new ACE components. It also, we're also using it right now in the development version of the text clustering consilience application. And PrimeFaces 3, one of the things that that they did in their version 3 was they eliminated the use of the jQuery UI and YUI in building the components to make it more JSF centric. And also, one neat thing that they added was a widget var, which one of the things that Mike mentioned was that sometimes we have a hard time getting a handle on a component in a page. And this widget bar allows you to assign a variable to a component and then use it elsewhere. So this dialog box has a widget bar of DLG, and then you can have an output link that on click shows the dialog box, and you can refer to it as DLG. So that's kind of neat. You don't have to go through the hierarchy of Form 1 and wherever it is on the page. So PrimeFaces 3.4 was released just a couple of months ago. They added some performance enhancements, including the lazy loading of views, so you only incorporate that much, as much data as is shown. And we actually ended up, in our application, we have ICEfaces data tables where we wrote our own lazy loader. So it'd be interesting to see if we tried PrimeFaces, if that would improve our performance beyond what we were able to do and what we wrote on our own. And they also have a JSF mobile for using jQuery mobile, which we haven't really dealt with. And RichFaces 4, like PrimeFaces, it avoids using the jQuery UI and YUI. And another interesting feature that it has is a rich jQuery component that applies styles and custom behavior to JSF objects and regular DOM objects, and it allows you to encapsulate functions into a component instead of writing it in the JavaScript section of your page. And it also has a couple of hooks into IDs similar to the widget bar. So it's a rich component ID allows you to get a reference to the client JavaScript object and invoke the available methods on it.
So we found that ICEfaces 3 is a good solution for our project. We can use jQuery-enabled components without rewriting large code base. The new JSF libraries don't completely eliminate the need to write our own jQuery if we want to use something, a little more customizable of a feature. Some issues remain. We need to reapply jQuery after page updates, and incorporating multiple jQuery-enabled libraries causes conflicts. For our Consilience app, ICEfaces, Ace animation component doesn't allow for the animation navigation we created. If libraries were to add more hooks for existing components, they would allow more specific attributes to be able to control different elements across the DOM rather than specifically what you're clicking. That's all we have for our presentation. Open the floor for questions or comments or anything.
Back on the, let's see, was it the Consilience app where you were uploading the files, the documents?
The Dataverse, yeah.
Oh, the Dataverse.
Dataverse.
Have you, I have a situation where I'm uploading documents much like that, and one of the key factors for my business stakeholders was allowing multi-select browse buttons, basically, which is a bit tricky in a cross-platform world. Was that an issue for you? Or?
Yeah, it is, and the component that we use doesn't support it yet, and that's a known issue on ICEfaces side. So what we did was, their proposed solution is to have multiple, browse buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we did was, have a single browse button that you could use multiple times, and that's why we had to apply the click method on page refresh.
I'm sure you kind of implemented around that.
We had to work on it without, implementing the full multi-click.
Yeah, and we also have in the example here other fields that we had to upload in our per file. So like category and description and whatnot. So but in your case we were talking about like the browse feature. Yeah, the browse feature the component did not allow for highlighting multiple through the control. Yeah.
Okay. The file actually gets uploaded directly after the browse, but It's not until the Save button at the bottom of the page that it gets assigned to the study that you're editing. So if you use the remove, the file has still been uploaded, but it's not assigned to that study that you're in. If that makes sense.
Like for the staging area then?
Right.
Yeah. I believe we had to disable, if you said that, like part of the component, like that does the upload, so that we could have this second step of adding a category title.
So what happens? So when you click on save or whatever, it just puts it in the database or wherever your database is.
Yep.
Right. From the staging area to there, like a move or a copy.
Yeah.
In the back. We're on JSF 2 for both of our apps. Mahara. Yeah.
So I can understand your decision on sticking with ICEfaces because you already had jQuery integrated with JSF. But if you were starting from scratch, doing your analysis, would that weight your decision which toolkit you use?
Yeah, I think so. When we first decided to integrate one of the JSF libraries, there wasn't the options that are available now. So I think we would have had a lot more work, deciding between them. I'm not sure which we would go with, but.
And the code base right now for Dataverse is pretty big. We've got many more pages that that use ICEfaces components, lots of data tables and whatnot.
For this talk, I mean, the others look impressive, so it definitely would be a decision. Just which one's out in front right now. I mean, it really gets down to specifics for the type of functionality that we have. Like examples like the add files page, which was something that that it wasn't a ideal solution, but we were able to kind of work around it and make it like the best we could, and I feel like it would have to kind of be like a page by page type of comparison for each library in order to figure out which worked best and what would be, I guess, the least amount of work to make that work. It was sort of like it didn't make sense in the UI. It was an extra click, and we thought it would be an easy enough solution with jQuery just to kind of like have an on change event and trigger that click, and it did work out easier than we expected, actually. I have no experience with JavaFX. I've been to a bunch of the presentations, and as far as I remember hearing that, yeah, it is jQuery and HTML5 and CSS3. It utilizes all of that, but in terms of applying it to a project, I don't have any experience with that.
I haven't used ICEfaces or any of the other add-ons. I was under the impression that JSF2 had Ajax built in. What does these items bring to the table above and beyond the built-in Ajax support of JSF2?
Sort of like a lot more of the components that they provide, stuff like data tables and pagination and like the file upload that we showed, the add file. All of these are stuff where everything is built for you. So you just really applying that to your page, and it's ready to go. Yeah, when Oh, the first version was 1.126. Right.
That's what some of the problems with data tables. This is a problem we have in practice. We have very large form data tables, and when you go to do an event like a link inside of a row table, and you want to update that table,
Yeah.
it updates the whole. The only way to do this work is the add form, and it updates the whole page. This takes a long time. We came up with a hack and style to do it, but I don't know if you have that problem, but if it's inside the container, so we have like a data table with a data table inside the data table.
Yes,
Or
yeah,
dynamic
the
area.
nesting of data tables has tripped us up quite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have it, we tried, and it did run into problems. And so we have links inside our data tables that open other tables that are not, right?
We added a style, and then what you can do is you can jQuery on the update,
Okay.
and then you can actually just update that particular table,
Okay.
but it'll update all the tables of that type. So you still,
Oh.
so we have like 6 tabs, and each of those tabs have tables in them, and some of those tables have tables. But it's a very complex form.
I can imagine.
But anyway, so we use the style to kind of alleviate that. Really, where the time is being taken is in JSF, the JSF tree on the server is actually taking time. So submitting all that, returning it all into that form. So it's kind of an ugly thing. I actually have a note in the PrimeFaces asking for to add a feature to be like update container, at container or something. So
They have
we'll pay them to write it.
they have a processing attributes. I think you need a 3D series that says these are the particular things. When you're doing a partial page rendering, these are the particular parts of the page that you want to actually process. Doesn't work? Okay, I haven't used it, but I
I've
actually
tried
have.
every combination of IDs. I've tried at
Really? Okay. But I have done the style thing too, and I go right to the cell level, so I can target a single cell.
Yeah.
But I had a natural ID that worked for me, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that's how I can send that one field over, not my whole form.
But
And it doesn't work?
It's the wrong one.
Okay, interesting.
And I got a bug in with PrimeFaces. I was a bug in the case of me. So we paid him money, so he said he'd write it. I just have to get him to investigate. So.
Question. I noticed you had some your jQuery code and the script tags.
Yep.
Within your pages. Was there reason for
Let's see if I can.
line?
I think it was. Yeah. So in this we have the second panel grid with the command link and the on click, which with the jQuery inside of that. Was that what you were referencing there?
Well, yeah, that's something I try to, unless I absolutely have to,
Mhm.
try to work on. That may be just ICEfaces just requiring you to do that.
It was a workaround. We have like for the refresh page, for the refresh button below that, you'll see that there's just your code there, and this block of jQuery is somewhere else on the page, and so we had problems with where this would be outside of a form or the placement on the page ended up being a problem. We had stuff that the backing bean would use like a pre-render to trigger a function that we'd put like our jQuery inside of a custom init function, and the pre-render would trigger that with a add JavaScript call from ICEfaces.
They could externalize this piece here.
Well, in this example, I was specifically trying to highlight the live functionality where we could, the live method where we could have something that is pretty much always on. It's always ready for the on click event.
Did you consider using event delegation?
No, I haven't tried that. We tried bind and live, and then since and then on was new for us, so we were figuring it out as we went through this presentation.
You might look at
Okay.
fairly efficient.
Okay. Anyone?
How's the things on ICEfaces compared to my opinion, sweet.
Pretty good. It's something that we've been able to customize. Stuff like the data tables and the headers will have images behind them, and it's been something that we can either go in and change the theme with our own custom CSS or overwrite the theme, depending on if we want to change the look and feel from one section to another. We can kind of control that with our own without having to go and change a theme from ICEfaces. But overall, that was definitely one of the selling points was that, like, not only is all this great functionality in there, but the themes are pretty good looking as well. That is something that was more of a recent issue, and so it was all new to us. We didn't have to consider anything like that. Like, we were already down the path with ICEfaces for a little while. Yeah. So in terms of he said, she said, it's kind of difficult to pick a side where we haven't really had too much experience with PrimeFaces other than the evaluation we were doing for this.
As users, I mean, what matters is that it works the way you do.
So is ICEfaces for taking PrimeFaces
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, it was the latest 3.0 had a fork from PrimeFaces 2.0.
What's going on with ICEfaces? We used to use it. We just switched to PrimeFaces.
Again, it was just something we evaluated for this presentation, and they definitely seem to have some interesting features that we specifically thought we could use for our for some of our functionality here. So, is there anything specific that you remember?
Yeah, that page is showing like.
And generally, open the
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this the first component and the find component were definitely two features that we thought. Okay. Mm. All right. Yep.
Can you test the user jQuery by itself without using any other faces?
Yeah. We initially just started with JSF and jQuery doing some very minor things like I was saying with like toggle, just to expand blocks of text and hide form elements, like some very simple stuff. But then we started looking more into Ajax to add even more dynamic functionality to the page, and started looking at the ICEfaces, primarily for that. And then jQuery started breaking on our page, and we had to kind of go through a whole process to figure out the best way. And it's been a work in progress. We're constantly figuring out better ways to handle it. But yeah, to jQuery, absolutely, you can add a whole bunch of the Consilience app that navigation, really is just, it's just all jQuery, the sliding around. So you really can add a whole lot of features through it. Yep. Yep. Well, the no conflict line, that is specific to the chunks of code. So if you just found a bit of code for this add class that you wanted to do. If you just were to copy an example off of a website and paste it on your page, and add the classes and whatnot that you wanted, and it wouldn't work, it could be because of the dollar symbol specifically. But separately, so no conflict allows you to change the dollar symbol to be jQuery or a different variable that you can also set. But what you're talking about specifically is having multiple jQuery libraries called in your project. Yeah, and yeah, that's even worse. Like sometimes you can get away. Sometimes you can get away with this, like depending on I guess what it is that you're doing.
One of the other guys in the office, he just went into the jQuery library and renamed some of the places where it was called jQuery to jQuery something else in the scripts. And we just called places, and by that artifact and that kind of fixed things for us.
Very nice.
It's a little confusing explanation.
Yeah, that's difficult to make sure you get everything, and then if an update comes out, then you have to remember what you did and apply that. So it can be difficult to start messing with the libraries.
So was the no conflict thing because of the JSP $$ issue?
We didn't specifically find where it was that was using it. We just found that a similar symptom was described where no conflict was the issue and the solution. So we didn't have to specifically find where it was butting heads. We just were able to use this one quick solution and solved everything. Yeah. Yeah, the browser compatibility for the components is generally really good. That's one of the biggest selling points of the libraries is they work all that out for you. So it could be I don't know, like something specific that in the integration process, if you're using something with your jQuery or CSS, it could be something like that. I'm not sure, but we didn't have any problems that I can think of major. All right, thank you, everyone.